This is not official yet, but everyone pretty much knows the next two legendary lords to come out for Total War Warhammer 2 will be Etherian the Grim for the High Elves and Grom the Paunch for the Greenskins. So assuming that these two factions are the next to get big updates, what more will they get? By looking at the army books and other expansions, we can get a general idea of what we're going to be seeing in the near future. We'll start with the Greenskins, as I'm more excited for their release. They have most of the roster already, but there's a couple of things that we might see. Black Orcs. But Keg, I hear you say, the game already has Black Orcs, and you'd be right. But I feel it possible that we'll get a Lord or Hero version of the Black Orc, but even more likely, we'll see the Armed to the Teeth special incorporated into the game. We should expect to see Black Orcs with additional hand weapons and Black Orcs with shields, giving this already terrifying unit even more versatility. I feel like one of the most likely units that we're going to get to see for the Greenskins is my personal favorite chariot, the infamous Snotling Pump Wagon, known for its moderate success against low-tier units and extreme goofiness. In the tabletop, they would have random movement speed and deal a lot of low-strength hits. They had a rule called Pump Harder, Lads, which would make them go even faster for a short period of time. They also had Too Pumped Up, and if you rolled doubles on their movement, they would lose control and go in a random direction, possibly hitting your own units. They even had a short-range attack where they'd throw spores to, little effect. There was a bunch of fun upgrades you could give him as well. Spiky rollers would make him do more damage. Outriggers were makeshift sails that make him go faster. Flappers would help them bounce around so they'd go over small obstacles. And giant exploding spores would make their impact hits do more damage. Snotling pump wagons are not to be taken seriously. They are fun, gimmicky units. Another unit we might get to see are Snotlings. Snotlings are the size of a goblin baby. They kind of look like a green chihuahua, and are even less scary. It's possible that we might not get to see these guys in Total War, since they haven't added any swarm units yet, but if they want to add more gobble units, I think these guys would be a good add. The next thing we have on the list is the Goblin Spear Chucker. As you guessed, these things chuck spears. It's a ballista, and it's kind of like a made in China kind of quality. We might get to see Ruglug's Armored Orcs as an orc regiment of renown. These were orc archers with crossbows and heavy armor. They could deal some damage with range, have some armor piercing, and hold their own in combat as well. These were a really good unit in the tabletop, and I would love to see them in the game. Another unit that I feel that we're very likely to get are the Rogue Idols of Gork. Or possibly Mork? This was one of the biggest models that you could get in the tabletop game. These things were twice the size of a giant and could take down just about anything. They are unbelievably fast for their size, and they have some of the highest strengths, toughnesses, and hit points and armor saves in the game. These are anti-everything, and they're incredibly hard to bring down. If it gets included in the game, it'll likely be one of the priciest things as well. From now on, it's all squig units. Mangler squigs, one of my funnest to use in the tabletop. These were two large squigs that were tied together with a chain, but once they reach the enemy, they become about as wild as dogs when you get home from a long day at work. They go bonkers, bouncing off of each other in the walls and go in random directions. It would be fun to see, but I don't think that we're going to get these guys. Giant squigs! Another inclusion I find very likely. These guys are simple, and there's even mods to get them. It's just like it sounds. It's a squig, but bigger. These are the biggest two-legged bulldogs that you would ever see. It tiptoes the line of cute and freakish. And now for a very highly anticipated unit, one that I really want to see, but I fear that we might not, the Night Goblin Squig Gobba. This unit's never performed very well for me on the tabletop, and I occasionally take it because they're fun to use. Goblins chain down a giant squig, and then gather a whole bunch of smaller squigs, and cover those ones in a foul-tasting paste and shove it into the mouth of the great squig. Due to their awful taste, the big boy won't swallow them and eventually spits them out at a large distance, much like a living catapult. One thing I've always loved about the Greenskin roster is their zany, over-the-top approach to pretty much everything. Who says you can't have a little bit of lighthearted attitude when killing your enemy? And now finally, the new legendary lord that we're all expecting to see for the Greenskins. Grom the Paunch of the Misty Mountains, the biggest, baddest gobble that ever was. He can be taken on foot, or he'll have the option to ride in a chariot pulled by 3 great wolves. Grom is always accompanied by his little sidekick, Niblet. Niblet carries a lucky banner that provides a ward save for Grom. It's possible that Niblet won't be included in the game, but I think small additions like him really add to the character. It would be like seeing Skarsik not accompanied by his trusty squig, Gaba. Grom wields a creatively named Axe of Grom, also known as Elf Biter. This gives him extra damage and the killing blow ability, which becomes even more effective when fighting against elves of any kind. Grom also has a regeneration special rule. When Grom was a young warthog, he ate raw troll meat. The Battle of the Belly was a contest for the troll meat to regenerate and Grom to digest. Grom won and is now able to regenerate in a similar fashion as a troll. He also has a rule called Eat Elves for Breakfast. Grom has overcome his fear of elves, and as long as he's alive, goblins ignore their natural fear that they have of elves. This will likely come in the form of an army-wide leadership bonus when fighting elf factions. He also has Grom's Wog! Grom is so large that he can WOG! Just like any orc. Any other gobble lacks a proper voice for a good WOG! For the High Elves, we have a few units that are missing from the army book. First, I'll start with a lord that I feel that we're likely to see. The Anointed of Azurian. This is the most powerful of the Phoenix Guard. In addition to everything else that a normal Phoenix Guard has, these guys have a few extra rules. They have the magic resistance and the Blessing of Azurian, which gives nearby models a ward save as well. But perhaps the most impressive thing the Anointed of Azurian can do is they can take the Flame Spire and the Frostheart Phoenix as a mount option, as if those things weren't dangerous enough as it was. Another character that we might get to see are the Dragon Mages of Kalador. These are similar to the normal mages, with a few small differences. They can only ever take the lore of fire. The first spell they'll gain will always be the Flaming Sword of Rune. They're slightly better in combat than the average mage, but they still won't last too long. They can take the armor that the Dragon Princes get, giving them the same fire and physical resistances. But perhaps the most important thing to note about them is that they can ride a Sun Dragon. Another hero that we might see, but possibly not, is the Lotharan Sea Helm. A few special rules that they have are Naval Discipline, which makes it less likely for nearby units to be flanked, but this kind of depends on how the rule will be adapted to the game. It could be very useful or entirely useless. They also have Wind Rider. If he is mounted on a Lotharan Skycutter, he has a ward save against shooting attacks. What's a Lotharan Skycutter, you ask? Let me show you! Lotharan Skycutters are a unique chariot that I'm not very surprised have been left out of the game thus far. In fact, I'd be surprised if we ever got to see it. But with the appearance of war wagons, mobile artillery is now a thing, so perhaps. The Lotharan Skycutter is a flying chariot pulled by a bird called the Swift Feather Rock. This comes in two variants. The first is basic, with a crew only having spears and bows, very much like most other chariots. Its shooting will be less effective than even the Wood Elf Warhawk riders. The second variant, which will be much more popular, is mounted with an Eagle Eye Bolt Thrower. This is a slightly weaker version of the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower that we already have, and it doesn't have the two different ammo types, but if used right, this could be devastating. Next, we have another kind of chariot. I'm personally not a very big fan of either of the chariots that the High Elves currently use, but this one packs a much bigger punch. The Lion Chariot of Trace. It is drawn by two great war lions that will rip through just about anything it comes across. And in the back are two white lion charioteers, wielding their famed great axes. The chariot has no missile weapons and is pure melee. This inclusion is something that I feel the High Elves really need. White lions could also possibly be their own little feral unit, much like warhounds or cold ones. They might be a little bit slower, but they would pack a heck of a punch. The Arcane Phoenix. It may be unlikely that we'll see this version of the Phoenix in the game, but it would mostly just be a reskin of the current Phoenix, so maybe. It would be about as good in melee as the previous versions that we already have, but this guy stands out with his new special rules that he would bring. Cleansing Flames. When fighting against undead or demonic units, he deals extra damage. Omen of Hope helps High Elves rally. This would function similarly to the rally or stand your ground rules that already exist in the game. Omen of Sacrifice drives High Elves into fury and gives nearby units the Frenzy special rule. Ember Storm is a fierce charge that the Arcane Phoenix is capable of. When it flies into combat, it leaves a burning trail in its wake, setting everything in its path ablaze. Plumage of Flames gives the Arcane Phoenix a strong physical resistance, similar to Cairn Wraiths and Hex Wraiths. The last unit that I think we might get, and one that I feel very likely, the Merworm. There's a couple of reasons why I think we might get this guy. Most notably, we've already seen it. They made a model for him in the final battle for the Vampire Coast campaign, and since they've already got a model, it would just be a little bit more work to do to get some animations. Something that Creative Assembly does very well for the monsters, by the way. The Merworm also has an appearance in the Monstrous Arcanum, a book that contains several monsters that Creative Assembly's already used. His first appearance, however, was in the Storm of Chaos campaign book back in, just let me take a look here, 2004! Holy crap. I remember playing this game when it came out. Jesus, makes me feel old. The Merworm didn't have a model back then, and it didn't even have any artwork. The new Eshin units and characters that the Skaven got recently first made their appearance in this expansion as well. That's right, the Master Assassin, Eshin Sorcerers, and the Triads all had tabletop rules 16 years ago, but I'm getting off track. The Merworm, like many monsters, causes fear and terror. He also has a regeneration rule. Gains bonuses when in water terrain, just like the Vampire Coast units. Has poisonous attacks, enfeebling cold, which works similar to the cold aura that several Norscan units have. The Abyssal Cloak, which gives a missile resistance, and nearby units take leadership penalties if subject to psychology. Since High Elves currently don't have any monsters on the ground, I feel like this would be a very welcome addition to their current unit roster. And what mighty lord will lead these new units that we might see? None other than Eltharion the Grim, no relation to the Brothers Grimm. The mighty warlord of Yvresse rides into battle upon his Griffin Stormwing. Side note, Griffins will surely be a new mount option for the Elven Lords, and most likely have a feral unit variant as well. But before I distract myself too much, back to Eltharion the Bleak. He's equipped with the Fang Sword of Eltharion, a weapon that deals high strength damage and cuts through armor like a fat kid into a birthday cake. The Helm of Yvresse gives Eltharion and Stormwing a ward save. The Talisman of Hoeth grants him some small magic resistance and gives him spells. It allows him to cast magic as if he were a wizard himself. When fully kitted out, I can only imagine how deadly he's gonna be. But he does have one more special rule to note. Blood Oath. He gains bonuses to hit when fighting Grom the Paunch of the Misty Mountains. Why, you may ask? Well, this is a video for another day. I'm going to make another video for Eltharion the Grim and Grom the Paunch, explaining their histories a little bit, and showing why these two lords' fates are tangled. Perhaps Creative Assembly will surprise us with entirely new stuff that we haven't had rules for on the tabletop. What additions do you think that we're going to get for the High Elves and the Greenskins? Was there anything I forgot to mention? If you enjoy my content, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend. But I'm off to work now because YouTube doesn't pay my bills.